Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Happy Friday, everyone. This is Marty Kaiser with our Friday edition of our podcast, Real Estate Tidbits. We're cheating a little bit. We're actually recording this on Thursday afternoon. We're going to be out of pocket tomorrow. I've got a full day, so we didn't want to miss our Friday episode, so we're taping it as we speak Thursday afternoon. So as you probably noted, we're getting our typical spring shower as they started a little bit later this year, but every afternoon pretty much we're getting rain. And we've actually had our first potential storm warning. So this is projected to be an above average year with storms and the dreaded hurricane. So everybody should be prepared and be proactive just in case we get anything that's going to impact the Central Florida area. So what is going on now? Well, first and foremost is the NBA championships are starting tonight finally. They've been off for about 5 or 6 days. So the serious sport fans have been waiting anxiously for these games. So it's going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder against the Indiana Pacers. Should be a great game. Oklahoma City is known for their tremendous defense and depth. They play 9 or 10 players deep, and they have the most valuable player in Shai Gilgeous. For Indiana, they were a surprise team, very good team, very exciting to watch. They're probably the fastest paced team in basketball. They try to score as much as they can. I think they're going to be a little bit more challenged to maintain that pace against Oklahoma City because Oklahoma City is deep, fast, and has a lot of athletic personnel. But it should be a great series to watch. My official prediction for this series, as always, has been Oklahoma City to win. And I'm going to say they're going to win in 5 games, meaning they'll win 4-1. But for those interested, the game will be on tonight, and I think it starts around 8:30. So that's all for sports tonight, or today rather. Regarding real estate, it's very interesting what is going on. You've probably heard my last few podcasts, and I talk about how this year, for this time of the year, has been very unusual. We haven't had the rate of increase that we normally have experienced. In fact, this year has the least amount of change in terms of traffic from the winter and early spring to as we're entering our peak season that I've experienced in almost 15 years. And I really don't expect a big change between now and the end of the year. The one thing that I've been very proactive about, and what you're going to be hearing a lot on these podcasts, is value, opportunity, and pricing. So what do I mean by that? Well, from an opportunity standpoint, I think this is the best time we've had since COVID started for a buyer. Why is it good? Well, number one, you're getting in most areas more inventory, so you have more choices. Number two, sellers that are well informed need to be a little bit more realistic on their pricing and negotiating strategy. The sellers that have maintained kind of a strategy that was successful 2 or 3 years ago, their houses are sitting. So what you're going to see a lot more is price adjustments for the houses that are sitting so that sellers make their homes a lot more appealing to prospective customers. I know myself on a personal level, we lowered 2 prices recently. They were both Hunters Creek, nice homes, both 4-bedroom, 3-bath pool homes. One was in the Heather Glen section. We lowered the price on that one $15,000. We made it an extremely attractive price, and we're in the midst of negotiating an agreement on that one. Less than a week after we adjusted the price. The other one is a really nice home in the Keaton's Crest section of Hunters Creek. It's a 3-car garage, over 2,700 feet on one level, immaculately maintained. And we've lowered that significantly. We've had it on the market for a few weeks, and the sellers instructed me they want to eliminate any aggravation and let's give the best price we can to customers. So we've adjusted that price to $649,809, which for that particular house in that section of Hunters Creek with that square footage and a 3-car garage is a tremendous, tremendous opportunity. So if anyone is interested in more details on that property or anything else in Hunters Creek, please let me know. As of this morning in Hunters Creek, we had about 44 homes for sale. And again, what you're finding are what I would call the more moderately priced houses. And I define those in Hunters Creek as being under $500,000. Those houses, because there's not nearly as many of them and they're on the lower end of Hunters Creek, that particular market has remained quite strong. So if you put a house up in that price point and it's in reasonably good shape, it's going to sell quickly and should sell for a very solid price. The ones that I would call for Hunters Creek anyway, the middle-priced homes, and this applies to other neighborhoods as well, are kind of the ones between the $600,000 and $900,000 price point. Those are what I call nowadays, that's kind of the middle tier of pricing in the popular areas. And those are the houses that have to be a lot more cognizant of these dynamics in the market and price and stage their home accordingly. And when I sit down with a potential buyer, I do an analysis of what their requirements are, not only what they can afford, but their locational preferences. Do they need to have a certain commute distance from where they move into? If they have school-age kids, are the kids going to go to public school? And of course, what schools are zoned for that neighborhood is going to be an important criteria. Does the prospective buyer require a pool? Do they require a 1-story home or a 2-story home? And any other variables that are important to their decision making. So I try to get an exact handle on those buyers' requirements so that I make the time with that buyer as productive as I can, and I show that buyer houses that meet their requirements. I don't take into account what I like, I'm taking into account what meets the buyer's requirements. So I eliminate my biases and strictly focus on the buyers. And I've always attempted to do that because at the end of the day, the buyer is going to be the owner of that home. They're going to own the home, hopefully for a good amount of time. They may raise their family in that home. They may not want to move for a number of years after that. So you want to make sure that the home that they settle in checks as many boxes as they can, and they're not settling or compromising. I can't stress enough how important that is to buyers. On the flip side, for sellers, it's important that they have all the information at hand. They have my opinions, experience, and recommendations, and they try to price their home accordingly, again, looking into the analytics, the trends, the perception of the buying public as to what's taking place. What I think is always kind of interesting, I'll always get a couple of agents that are less than ethical. Unfortunately, when you're in the sales business, it's on a commission basis. Some agents are not as honorable and ethical as they should be. So invariably, I'll get a couple agents that might say to a customer of mine, gee, your house is underpriced. You should price it higher. I don't know why your agent's priced it at that level. So I kind of, at the same time that I'm irritated for the agent being totally out of line and unethical, I also chuckle at that, because invariably when we get those comments from an agent, I have a couple of simple questions. Well, if it's such a great bargain, then how come you haven't shown the house? Why don't you bring your buyers if it's such instantaneous equity for those buyers? The truth of the matter is because they don't, and it's not underpriced at all. They're just trying to create concern for that seller, and they hope to poach in on that listing at a later date and maybe try to convince the seller to switch agents. Fortunately, most of my sellers know my skill level and my track record, and I don't really have to worry about people jumping ship, so to speak. But I just find it's very disappointing that people have to act that way. Unfortunately, in our society, increasingly, facts are not important. If people tell lies long enough, they start to be believed. And a lot of times, these lies are easily proven that the person that's speaking these lies is just making this up, or maybe said something completely contrary to what they're saying now a few months ago. We run into that in politics all the time. I won't name names, but some of the politicians that we've interfaced with over the last 8 to 10 years, lying is a regular part of their regimen, and a lot of people believe them because they say these lies with such certainty and just won't back off of them at all, that it's comical as well as being unfortunately disappointing. You know, people should win or lose based on their own merits, their expertise in the field, and their ability to give people viable and realistic solutions. But unfortunately, that doesn't always take place in our society. So what do I forecast over the next 2 or 3 months? Well, I think more of the same. I am starting to observe, which is a good sign, that on these properties that I'm referencing that are starting to be either price adjusted or put on the market at a much more realistic price, they're starting to move again pretty quickly. I think, the buyers are starting to be more educated, the realistic buyers. Now, you're always going to get a handful of buyers that come in with ridiculously low offers. But, as a real estate broker, you present every offer, even if you know it's not based on any kind of practical evaluation. But I think for the realistic buyers that are looking for a nice house at a very affordable price, there's a lot more opportunity for them. A lot of making a successful transaction work is making the offer what I call as clean and attractive for the potential seller as you can. Meaning we're not talking about price right now, but just putting in terms that eliminate a lot of the ambiguity or that are making unusual requests that put more uncertainty on the seller. The cleaner you can make the offer, the better the opportunity to put the transaction together. And at the end of the day, you're going to have a successful closing with both a happy buyer and seller. I've always tried to do that, and I will continue to try to do that. We are starting to see a few more rental properties in some areas. What I've seen in some of the more upscale areas is houses are being put on, especially later model houses, like in the Lake Nona area, for example. Sellers will own a house that's less than 5 years old. They'll put an extremely high markup on the house, and it's not as realistic as it could be based on the market conditions I'm citing. So what I've seen some of these sellers do now is they convert their home to rental property because the rental market is still quite solid. And so because these folks evidently, they didn't have desperation in selling, they'd rather rent the house for a healthy price rather than selling it for less than what they wanted to take in as a profit. So that's understandable from their perspective, and we're starting to see more of that. Speaking of rentals, we have a couple of new rentals we're going to be putting on the market. One is in a community called Peppermill, which is about 10 minutes north of Hunters Creek. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. about 1,400 living area. It's on a cul-de-sac with no through traffic, and that one is asking $2,450 a month. If you'd like more information on that, please feel free to reach out to me. I can be reached at 407-595-9700. And we will be putting up a house in the next few days in Hunters Creek in the Vistas. It'll be in the Vita Vista section. Again, it's a 3-2 house, well-maintained, about 1,600 feet of living area, and the seller is still contemplating what price they want to put on it. So we should have that information for you, hopefully, by our next podcast. So that's all the real estate information for today. I've cut this podcast a little bit shorter. You're probably tired of hearing from me anyway. So I hope everybody has the great rest of the week. Enjoy your weekend. We've got Father's Day coming up, so take care of us old dads out there. Spoil us a little bit. We always spoil everybody else, and we love being spoiled a little bit ourselves. So take care, be safe. This is Marty Kaiser out.